Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Good afternoon to you.
Lee, what I just realized is you have a city on your shirt and I have a city on mine.
I do.
Philadelphia and Florence.
Yes.
Friends.
Yeah, not Florence, Alabama.
Not to be confused with Florence, Alabama. Talk me through where you got that shirt.
In Florence, Italy.
Did you really?
Yeah.
And why were you there?
I was there. This was before I knew you, I guess. I spent a semester teaching in Florence in the spring semester of 2024 with how many? 12 students and living in a villa there for 3 months. And it was fantastic.
Making sacrifices for the kingdom.
Sacrifices for the Lord. That's right.
And what was your takeaway of Florence?
I love Florence. I would go back anytime I could go back. It's an amazing city. It's just so remarkable. And I learned so much about European history, about art. It was wonderful.
Wait, what class did you teach?
Let's see. I just taught a version of my Joy in the Good Life class for like general education.
Nice.
There. Yeah. And then they had a wonderful art history professor from Florence. And so I would go to her class with the students. And then there was a class on kind of the culture of Florence and Italy that I also sat in on and attended. So
isn't that magical?
It was great. I really
love
love
it.
Yeah.
Beautiful story behind the shirt, Florence, Italy. My shirt came from a yard sale 2 weeks ago in Nashville.
I love shirts with city names.
Would you?
Yeah. Maybe that could be something that people could send us. If they love us, they could send us T-shirts from their city and we'll wear it on the show.
The way you just said that, though, made it seem like we've been sitting around thinking, what can our listeners send to us? And you're like, I've come up with the solution.
It just flitted into my head and there we go.
Yes, if we've given anything to you, then you want to give something back to us. City shirt names.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
One
of my other favorite shirts is a shirt from Bozeman, Montana.
Nice.
That a student gave me one time.
Have you been to Bozeman?
When I was a kid on a family vacation. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway.
I love that. That could be a good bit, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right.
Just every week us showing up in new shirts. You just never know. Well, Lee, we haven't read reviews in a while, which Brandon, our listener from many months ago, told us to stop reading as many. And I really did take it to heart.
Apparently so.
So it's been a while. And I'm going to read one review.
Okay.
That was very complimentary.
Oh, good.
Okay, Kaylin Wedicking, which I just love that whole name. It's amazing. Kaylin said this about last week's episode. I absolutely love this podcast. Thank you for the patience and nuance you bring to each conversation while sustaining your joyful light in the midst of tough and serious subjects. Would you be willing to discuss how a disciple living in modern America is to orient towards the nations in a virtuous and kingdom-like way? I grew up in a patriotic family, and now while watching the 4th of July shows, I feel like a foreigner amidst all of these shows. On one side, the nationalists, and the other, the consumer. Which I thought was great feedback. Thank you.
Yes.
And a great question.
Yes.
So do you have any kind of like initial thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
But I would summarize it in terms of I always think about, one thing about patriotism, I always think about C.S. Lewis. I think it was in Mere Christianity where he's talking about patriotism and he exalts it as a virtue and says that it gets us out of our own petty, paltry, self-centered, individualistic, because we care for the community. We care for something bigger than ourselves. And I think, yeah, there's something to that. And then I also always think of Tolstoy, who said something like, why does anybody call patriotism a virtue? No one calls self-centeredness a virtue, and patriotism is but self-centeredness writ large. And I think there's something to that as well. And so I think that if anyone is overly patriotic, it causes them a lot of concern, because being overly patriotic can get wrapped up in a disordered love for the country, disordered love for one's own people, and then you stop paying attention to truth and the failures and the horrors even of the story of your own nation. And yet at the same time, one can grow so cynical and so constantly harping that one fails to look at the beauty of one's neighbors and the beauty of one's country, and the gifts of it all. So it's always tricky. And the last thing I'll say on it very quickly is that we must never forget that the nation state is a historical accident, right? Because
you've said this you've used that phrase 3 times in the last few months. And every time I'm like, what are you talking about? So maybe you should go into that more.
Okay. So, Texas wasn't a part of the United States until rather recently.
Right.
And that happened because of political power grabbing land that didn't belong to it.
Right.
California, so much of what we call the United States of America only happened because of historical accident. It could have been otherwise. It wasn't ordained. You can't, if you go up in space, there are no boundary lines drawn on the globe, right? They're all historical accidents that resulted from political power and oftentimes militaristic power taking what didn't belong to you. And if you don't constantly remember that, you're not remembering the truth about what a nation state is. And then once those historical accidents are drawn, then they're protected by immense military might.
Right.
And typically self-centered nation state rights. I mean, what nation gives up its property? What they're always doing is grabbing somebody else's, right? And so if we don't keep that in mind, I think we're not rightfully paying attention to how one postures oneself towards the nation state.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That is really clarifying when you use that historical accident language, because you're not saying that there was no human intention behind it, because there was, because of political and militaristic power. But what you're saying is that, God did not ordain the United States of America to end with the southern tip of Texas and go to the northern tip of Wyoming or whatever.
Right.
Kind of reminds me, I don't know why this is the connection in my mind, but it reminds me of the first time I realized that the Bible didn't come with verses and chapters.
Yeah.
But it's we did that.
Yes.
And just to recognize that human influence is at play in all of this.
Yeah.
And John 3:16 isn't John 3:16.
Right.
It's that we added those structures.
One time when I was teaching on some of the stuff about, what the Bible says about women in leadership or men in leadership, that sort of stuff, I was being a little snarky, but I got to the point where I was talking about how people simplistically say, well, the Bible says.
Yeah.
And I threw up I said, let me show you what the Bible really says. And I threw up on the screen the Greek text.
The original.
Right, yeah. And then even pointed to the footnotes that show all the textual variants that could be the case, right? So we always want to simplify things.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for the review. Thanks for the feedback. And what Lee was just quoting with C.S. Lewis and who?
Leo Tolstoy.
Tolstoy, exactly. He wrote a Substack on it this week.
I did, yes.
And it was your first Substack.
My first Substack.
Congrats, Lee
Yeah,
Camp.
thank you.
Great job. So everyone, if you want to read more about what Lee says and then says again on the subtext, then you can go on his Substack and read it. All right, on that note, let's start the show.
If you've ever blasted synth beats from your boombox or burned CDs for your besties, this one's for you. As people get older, much like their music tastes, their health needs change. AG1 is the simple daily health drink designed to deliver over 75 essential daily nutrients and pre- and probiotics to support energy, digestion, and mood, so you can make the most out of every decade and dance break. Learn more at drinkag1.com.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Hello, my friends. We're getting ready to launch another No Small Endeavor cohort set to begin in September. These have been a delight. Our cohort invites intellectually curious individuals to deeply explore what it means to live a good life, with the ultimate goal that our work together will make space for greater resilience, joy, and a vision for how to contribute meaningfully to the world around us. If you're someone who's interested in asking big questions like what sort of life is a life worth living, and how am I pursuing my vision of a good life, if you're interested as well in considering those kinds of questions in light of moral philosophy, human psychology, and the social sciences, and a generous, hospitable Christian theology, then you might just be the perfect candidate. You can check out our socials or navigate to our website, nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. There you can learn more and submit an interest form. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. We look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
I'm Lee C. Camp.
And listen, we're not going to beg for reviews anymore. We're going to give you all a break. But what we want to let you know is after you send us shirts with city names on it, you can watch full episodes on YouTube and Spotify of the Subtext. And you can stay connected on Instagram at the Subtext Show. You can follow me at Savannah_Locke, and you can follow Lee at Lee C. Camp. And this is not meant to be a monologue between me and myself and I, or me and Lee, which would be a dialogue. This is meant to be a communal thing. So if you have any drama, just shoot us a message.
Drama? Is that what we want to ask for?
Perhaps.
Okay. If you have drama, DM Savannah.
And if
you have something beautiful and constructive to say, DM me.
Honestly, so true. And we'll, keep this ball rolling. Yep. But thanks for everyone for listening. It's been really great to see all the feedback. Okay, Lee, here's what I want to talk about today. I want to call this episode Hookup Culture, Power, and Love.
Nothing fraught there.
Nothing fraught there. But this is where I got started with this, is recently in New York, these daredevil skywalkers is what they're called. A man and a woman went all the way to the top of the Empire State Building illegally. And they go up there dressed kind of like, she was like kind of dressed like Catwoman a little bit. And they take this huge sign that they had made that had this quote on it, and they flew it from the top of the Empire State Building, and helicopters are swirling around. It's all over the news. And then this policeman kind of gets as close as he can to them. And literally there's this amazing body cam footage where the policeman was like, hey, you guys can't do that. Please calm down. But anyways, this is what their flag said. When the power of love beats the love of power, the world knows peace. And then they got engaged at the top of the Empire State Building. They climbed their way back down, and then they got arrested. But then they got on a bail because they're kind of these famous influencers with a lot of money. So I think they knew this was going to be like a whole performance art kind of thing. But that quote really got me thinking. I want to talk a little bit about what power is. Because what this quote saying, when the power of love beats the love of power, like what is the love of power and what is power in and of itself? And is that really what will bring about peace in the world? And I just thought you might have some good thoughts on it.
I did see that.
You saw it on the news?
Yeah, I saw it on Instagram.
You're kidding. And what did you think of it when you saw?
I just thought it was interesting. And apparently I don't remember her name, has done all sorts of these performative climbing on top of things.
She's a performance artist.
Yeah.
They have their own Netflix special.
I saw that. Fascinating. And kind of terrifies me even though I'm not afraid of heights, it still is kind of terrifying to see them standing on the top of those
totally
platforms.
Untethered.
Yeah, because I'm thinking wind gust and I'm afraid you're gone. So anyway, so I did pay attention to it. What is power? I mean, power is the capacity to make something, to affect some change or to affect something in the world, right? You have the power to move something or the power to accomplish something or to do something or to make something happen. All that capacity seems to be power. Fair enough.
Would you say, so for you, is power the same thing as agency or influence?
I would think that influence is a form of power.
Nice. Okay.
And agency is the capacity to choose to employ power.
Wield one's power?
To wield power.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So power, I think sometimes can get a bad rap, right? Where we're like, these people are all craving power and they're wanting to use it to lord over other people. In your mind, is power neutral and can be used for good or bad? Or do you think that power corrupts?
So do you know in Lord of the Rings,
Nice.
the ring?
Yeah.
Right? The ring of power. That was rhetorical.
It's
Are
just
you
so
with
Christian.
me?
Yes.
Are you
But
with
it's
me?
also just such a Christian analogy. And then
No,
do you know what was going through my mind just there was, I am shocked that we have had 42 episodes and we have not once mentioned Lord of the Rings yet.
Well, I'm not.
We deserve a medal.
We do, because I'm not going to stop there.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I want to go to Plato.
Okay, nice. Okay.
which is where it came from. Do you know this?
No.
Oh, you don't know this? Okay,
No.
great. So there was in one of Plato's writings, The Republic, there was he tells us a story about this shepherd named Glaucon,
Okay.
and who tells the story about this shepherd name. His name is, I don't know for sure how you pronounce his name, but I think it's Gyges, Giyges, Gyges. And he tells the story about there's these shepherds sitting around a fire, and this Gyges guy finds this ring on the ground, and he picks it up and he slips it on his finger, and he realizes it makes him invisible. And then he goes on with that kind of power to seduce the queen, kill the king, and seize royal power. And so obviously the story is a parable about saying if you have uninhibited, unaccountable power, it at least raises the question, who among us can have unaccountable power and it not corrupt us?
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I do think that then would wrongfully lead some people to say power is bad. But I think the better question is, what kind of power, and what's the power doing to us, and what kind of accountability do we have in our employment of power? And if we do have power with impunity, it's probably going to be really, really dangerous. But if you have power that gives some account and has some proper ends, then it's a beautiful thing.
So what that's reminding me of is, first of all, the humility piece, which I think is really good to integrate as in this conversation around power, because it could come across as critical. That who among us would not be seduced by power?
Right.
And it reminds me, this is so silly, but when Todd, my husband, was touring for the first 5 years of our marriage, like he would do like very big shows. So like he would be in South Africa with like 30,000 people, and then all these stadiums. Like we met at Bridgestone Arena. And so when I started going from being an audience member at those shows to then being backstage at the shows, and then he's the band director, so I get like the VIP pass and all of that. I remember one day I was walking in with the little VIP pass, and I felt better than people. and I remember looking down at this lanyard being like, what? Like, I remember thinking, like, you have lost a plot if you in any way feel better than someone else because you are wearing a lanyard at a Christian concert. Like, stop it. But that's what that reminds me of.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, how like seductive it can be to just feel better than other people because of like power access that you have to like different places.
Right.
It's my own ring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who of us haven't in some way experienced that, right? And it is funny how the slightest sort of bit of power can so idiotically go to your head.
Yes.
And you can begin to think things that you would never want to think, or
in 10 billion years.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah. And then I think it's interesting to think about how you obviously explicitly have in, say, the kenosis hymn in Philippians 2, where Jesus is almost like the anti-Gyges.
Yes.
Gyges, where he has divine power, where Gyges gets the ring, kills the queen, seduces the queen, kills the king, grabs royal power. Jesus is the counter to that. He has divine power, divests himself of that, and takes upon himself the form of a slave to serve, right?
Yep.
And obviously, Jesus as well is exhibiting the immense power of love, but it's a refusal to have that kind of power that exhibits whatever it is, the capricious nature of self-serving power, and instead power for the good of another.
It's like power. Jesus is the demonstrator of power with downward mobility. It's like power that goes down versus power that plows up. I don't know. There's like a really interesting reversal that in the way that Jesus uses power. But there's also power. What I'm trying to also like reconcile in my brain as we're talking is that Jesus also was really powerful. And so it's not that Jesus emptied himself of power. It's that Jesus used his power to help people.
But he also emptied himself of some kind of like, in becoming human, he empties himself of certain divine prerogatives.
Oh, like privileges.
Of privileges.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay, so maybe I don't believe what I said.
Or maybe you just add on, qualify it.
It certainly seems that Jesus did not tap into power that he was able to. Like I'm thinking about do you not think that I can call on my Father and have legions of angels to like rescue me from this? Like where there was clearly some sort of access or privilege to the lanyard, if you will,
right,
that he didn't put on.
Yeah.
Or didn't call on. And I'll leave that. But then also I'm thinking of like in Acts 2, and we're getting very in like the Bible. I'm thinking of Acts 2, and this is what made me think about the love of power, is that like
you're getting even more Christian than quoting Lord of the Rings.
I know, so true. From Lord of the Rings to the Bible, all we need is Braveheart next, and we will get the whole trifecta. But thinking of Acts 2, of like you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and like that being the commission, that I think I'm trying to sift through. Like, okay, what maybe does kingdom or Christian power look like, and how does that compare to the powers of the world?
Yeah,
because there is this also antagonism towards principalities and powers.
Right. Well.
How would you sift
Let me
through
just
that?
parenthetically say something really quickly that doesn't sit quite right with me about something that you said, but I would have to think more about it.
Yeah, can you tell me?
You were comparing Jesus' power to having a lanyard on.
It was for the bet. It was a callback.
I know.
It was a callback to my lanyard.
I know, but it was not a good callback.
Okay.
There are good and there are bad callbacks. And that probably, it's what do they call it when you overextend a metaphor,
It was an overextension.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
But let's move on. Let's move on, and we don't have to make a big deal out of your poor callback.
Jesus, I'm sorry for saying you needed a lanyard.
But what your larger point that you were making there, I think
was good.
Was quite right.
Was good,
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like even thinking about the temptations of Jesus. One of the pious ways that temptations of Jesus gets told in the sermon series is that he's being tempted in all points like as we are, that way. And I always think, no, he's not. He's being tempted the way a Messiah who is God in flesh is going to be tempted. And that's not the way we get tempted, though we can be tempted in analogous ways. But, he's being tempted, as a number of commentators have made this point, with what kind of Messiah is he going to be, right? Is he going to be a welfare king and just distribute bread? Is he going to be a spectacle maker, like climbing to the top of the Empire State Building with a flag of saying something about love?
Interesting comparison.
Or is he going to be an emperor and a MAGA, make America, make Israel great again kind of king? And Jesus rejects all three of those kinds of approaches and says there's a bigger story or a different story. And so he keeps going back to the suffering servant and that kind of vision of power, which is the power of self-service, the power of suffering love, as opposed to the power that wields over.
Yes. And I didn't know if you had the way that it was described to me with David Fitch has a book, I think, about power that he taught a lot of when in my school, where he did the power over, power under, and then power with. That's like how he differentiated maybe uses of power. And I don't know if that have you ever heard of that or if that's come from somewhere else?
I don't know.
Okay. But that's always kind of been helpful as I've thought about it, is like power over is that domination, coercion, violence. Power under is like the lifting up. And then power with is the joining alongside, like solidarity. And I think in his view, the under and with is the path of the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the power over is the principalities and powers and the way that they function.
Yeah.
Which I think can be a helpful way of looking at it.
That seems helpful to me as well.
Anything else about power that you want to talk about before we go to what's next in the news? Besides the fact that that quote is typically attributed to Jimi Hendrix, that's not right. It was a British Prime Minister named William Gladstone that said it.
Oh, Brother William.
Do you know Brother William?
I just know of him.
Well, he had a great quote.
Yeah.
He really did.
Yeah.
He said, "We look forward to the time when the power of love will replace love of power. Then our world will know blessings of peace."
Yeah.
This is Tanya Mosley, co-host of Fresh Air. You'll see your favorite actors, directors, and comedians on late-night TV shows or YouTube. But what you get with Fresh Air is a deep dive. Spend some quality time with people like Billie Eilish, Questlove, Ariana Grande, Stephen Colbert, and so many more. We ask questions you won't hear asked anywhere else. Listen to the Fresh Air podcast from NPR and WHYY.
Hello, my friends. We're getting ready to launch another No Small Endeavor cohort set to begin in September. These have been a delight. Our cohort invites intellectually curious individuals to deeply explore what it means to live a good life, with the ultimate goal that our work together will make space for greater resilience, joy, and a vision for how to contribute meaningfully to the world around us. If you're someone who's interested in asking big questions like what sort of life is a life worth living, and how am I pursuing my vision of a good life, if you're interested as well in considering those kinds of questions in light of moral philosophy, human psychology, and the social sciences, and a generous, hospitable Christian theology, then you might just be the perfect candidate. You can check out our socials or navigate to our website, nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. There you can learn more and submit an interest form. Again, that's nosmallendeavor.com/cohort. We look forward to hearing from you. Hello, friends. Lee C. Camp here. At No Small Endeavor, we spend a lot of time talking about a good life, but the truth is, a good life is not something we can figure out alone. It's something we discover together in community. That's why we created Endeavor Together. Endeavor Together helps small groups gather to talk about the big questions of life using episodes of the No Small Endeavor podcast. Each series is a simple 4-week guide with questions, short videos, and prompts designed to spark meaningful conversation. We've just released our newest series called A Good Life. It's a 4-part exploration of what it means to pursue a life worth living in community. Here's how it works. Participants listen to a podcast episode ahead of time, then gather with a group to talk it through. We provide the framework for great conversation. The best part is, thanks to our friends at the Lilly Endowment Incorporated, it's completely free. You can explore A Good Life along with our other conversation series like Let's Disagree Better and Vulnerability by visiting nosmallendeavor.com or clicking the link in the show notes. It's interesting that you use the language performative art.
Performance art.
Performance art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think of performance art with a sort of prophetic message?
I'm all about a good performance art. One of my papers that I wrote in school was about art as nonviolent resistance against injustice. And a lot of Black artists have done this in the US, in art history in general, but specifically in like the last 15 years that I focused on it. And one really cool performance/protest art was done maybe in Virginia whenever people were talking about ripping down the Confederate statues. And this specific town in Virginia would not rip down their Confederate statue. It was huge. And so a artist painted portraits of different like Black faces and then projected them onto the Confederate statue every night to kind of like push back in protest against this statue. And I think that there's like a lot of really interesting examples of art being used perhaps as performative for ego, but then also in really good ways to shine a light on injustice.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I mean, I love that story, that example you just gave. I can think of lots of ways that that's very powerful and very moving and poignant and appropriate. And then there's also kind of it seems like in our own day and age, there's always so much, like I went to her website And it's really interesting because what you first see on her website is how many millions of this she has and how many hundreds of thousands of this she has, which I presume is her way of appealing to getting influencer
Sponsors,
deals.
yeah.
And so it's like, it seems, at least with that page, it's not, and that's her homepage on her website, that it's not so much about her message as much as it is spectacle that then leads to business deals. And so that's, that's a classic kind of way of getting things disordered. Which again, that goes back to, one of the great insights that Augustine always gave us is that even with something like power or even with something like love, it's, these things are good in and of themselves. Love and power are both good in and of themselves. There's no life apart from power. There's no good life apart from love. And yet love and power can so easily become disordered. And we begin to focus upon the wrong ends. And so even with something like performance art, we can very quickly begin to focus on the wrong ends that then can corrupt it from the inside out. But I mean, we're all a mixed bag of motives.
We seriously
We're
are.
all a mixed bag of motives. And so it's not to say, look at their mixed bag of motives. That's not my point. But just to say that it's a good reminder that we all must always be attentive to the ordering of our motives.
Yes. And to like the demonization of power, which I actually think, I don't know if it's just my circles or whatever, but I think sometimes there can be a demonization of power. But I love the way that you just said it there, where it's like there is no life apart from power. And it is so good that we have say-so and that we have agency and that we're able to make choices and we're able to influence change. That's a gift, that we're not jellyfish floating around in the sea, that we actually have some sort of agency and power. And so, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to chat about that because it's really, they're big subjects that feel still kind of abstract to me. Power and love. But yes to performance art. You will really love, I'll send you the article about that Virginia artist. Okay, so let's talk about more love and power, which we're moving away from power and more into love now. Or potentially a distorted form of love. With hookup culture. Lee, so there is an intellectual type social media influencer that I follow named Colton Barnaby. He's like I don't know if he finished seminary or not, but he is like a dropout vibe, but just really brilliant.
A seminary dropout vibe.
A seminary dropout vibe.
Some of the smartest people I knew in seminary dropped out.
So brilliant. And he's just a really good and gifted teacher too. So he has really interesting videos. And he did a video on hookup culture that I thought was very fascinating. So let me try to summarize as best as I can. So he connects hookup culture to both capitalism and purity culture. Do you have a vibe around purity culture?
Yes.
I know you have one around capitalism. So his assessment of capitalism is that it stays alive by destroying something human in us and then sells back a thinner version of whatever it stole back to us. So he compares this to like the village mentality where he's like, we should all be living among a community of people that are mutually supportive. But capitalism steals that by saying like, you need to go to the big city and get a big job and work for all this money. But then you isolate yourself from people, but you get the money to then outsource all of those things that villages should be giving to you, like paying for a nanny or paying for therapy or getting your groceries delivered, etc. Does that make any sense in terms of his? Okay. So he then, with that framework of capitalism, says that hookup culture is what capitalism does with sex. So he says that hookup culture teaches us to take our bodies and learn how to market it and become more appealing, but then to also become more detached from the emotional or spiritual realities of sex. And so we are basically being sold back a thinner version of sexual wholeness with hookup culture. And I basically just thought that his analysis was fascinating, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I would like to say as an aside, I think it's interesting if you think about, and I'm no capitalism scholar. I'm no economics professor. And I know plenty of problems and critiques with capitalism and consumerism. But I have this one particular book, the title of which I can't remember, but it was talking about the history of capitalism. And it says if you actually go back and you look at Adam Smith, some of the defenders of capitalism will say Adam Smith had a whole book on the theory. It was called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, where he talked about ethics with regard to capitalism. And I don't think that's a helpful way to defend capitalism. But what's more interesting to me is that what he's doing is that Smith apparently was reacting to people who had lockdown control over capital in land and rents from land. And he was saying, all you're doing is keeping the poor poor. And we've got to find a way at a societal level to let some of this stuff loose so that people can have access to capital, to have their own businesses, and to do good work in the world. And so I think a lot of times we might lose sight of historical developments that say, well, that's why that made so much sense, whatever it was, 250, 300 years ago when Adam Smith's writing this stuff. And again, there are problems with Adam Smith, the whole invisible hand and greed and all that kind of stuff. I know all those problems, and I agree that they're problematic, but it's just historically, it's interesting to say he was responding to a very real historical problem with people who were having immense power and immense greed, and they wouldn't let go of any of it. And he starts pushing this stuff to say, we need to force these people to let go of some of this so that more people can have access to it.
Okay, so are you saying that to round out the edges of what you perceive as people blaming everything on capitalism?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying I would want us at least to have some historical awareness that ideas don't pop out of the middle of nowhere with someone saying, well, let's teach everybody to be greedy, as some people will critique capitalism. I'm not saying this guy is critiquing capitalism that way, but one of the critiques is just teaching everybody individualistically to be greedy. And I would say, well, maybe by the time it gets to this point, that is what it's done.
Like the late stage capitalism.
Yeah, but early on, it seems that there were a little more noble intention in play in what gave rise to capitalism.
Okay.
And so that's just an aside that I think is an interesting aside.
History lesson with Lee.
Yeah. So, but with regard to this, what's this gentleman's name again?
Colton.
With regard to what Colton said, that's really interesting. And it reminds me of, do you know Bill Kavanaugh, Catholic theologian? Bill and I know each other some through the years, and I very deeply respect his work. But he's got this great book called Being Consumed. The subtitle is Economics and Christian Desire. And it's a really great little book. And I used it in my MDiv Christian ethics classes for years. But one of the things that he does in that book is that he says that consumer capitalism is not mainly about greed. It's about not being attached enough to things that we should be attached to. So our problem is not that we accumulate. It's that we buy something and then we don't care about it and we move on and buy something else. And we don't care about that and we move on and buy something else. That we've not learned to appropriately attend our desires so that we go rightfully attached to communities, to objects, to things, to craft, whatever the case may be, and we just use it and then move on. And so that's another kind of way I think that overlaps with what he's saying is that you can think about sex that way. And if you're not being willing to be properly cultivating the attachment that rightfully goes with sex, then you're corrupting your own self and you're corrupting what sex seems to be supposedly about.
Yes. And he actually talked a little bit about attachments in this video because he referenced an article by a gal named Erin Williams, which I read. It was called The Cost of Casual Sex. I didn't send it to you before this episode, but I just sent it to you a couple minutes ago, so you can read it because you'll find it interesting. But yeah, she actually then compares it to patriarchy. So what she basically says is that underneath both capitalism and patriarchy, women have had to learn to detach from their own desires or expectations. And with hookup culture, it's like women are being taught, like, you should be able to have sex with this guy and you shouldn't expect anything from it, because if you expect something from it, then you're needy or you're unrealistic or you're not easygoing. And so for her, she talks about how women have to carry the emotional burden of not only having these casual attachments, but also then having the burden of having to keep all of the internal monologue inside, because if you express it, then it's embarrassing or shameful. So if I have a casual hookup and I'm driving home thinking, wait, does that mean anything more? Like, I know we said we were going to keep it casual, but what if I want X, Y, and Z? That it's actually all of the shame is on the woman for thinking that, because then she could never reach out to him because then she would be too needy. And so she also would agree, I think, with this attachment piece, but she would maybe make it more genderized as it relates to sex.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, I have my own hesitations about wanting to genderize all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Just in the same way that I have my own hesitations about genderizing the damage that purity culture does. Purity culture didn't just hurt young women. It hurt young men deeply so.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this does a lot of damage regardless of gender. And I can't imagine that a hookup practitioner isn't going to get damaged in some way. And so I don't know what it's like, but certainly the cultural narratives that we have around it certainly paint a picture where you think, well, that sure would be desirable,
Yeah.
right? But that's one of the things that I think, again, going back to the consumerist piece or the economic piece, that's the whole shape of Western civilization, is that it goes back to our understanding of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that freedom means absence of constraint or freedom from constraint, when classically and biblically, freedom was always the capacity to do what's good, the power to do what's good. And which means that you have to have desires rightfully formed. And if your desires aren't rightfully formed, then it can never be freedom, right? And so the notion that I can not attend to attachment, I can do whatever it is that my desires want, my desires formed in whatever way, right, at their most maybe base, the conceit that is freedom is a narrative that gets sold to us in so many ways, and it wreaks havoc in its wake in so many ways.
Yes. In both men and women.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to think about that genderized piece. That's really interesting feedback, Lee. Something else that Colton said at the end was that a better vision for hookup culture, which would just be more of like a more holistic way of thinking about sex, for him would be of giving and receiving, whereas he says that capitalism is about taking or being taken from. So he said, what if we thought more about our sexual ethics in terms of giving and receiving? And this is the question he kind of leaves it with at the end, saying, I'm not talking about, should we be purity culture? Should we have hookup culture? Instead, it's what is our sexual ethic forming us into? That was like his major question at the end. And someone responded back with this and said, should we even be invested in a concept of sexual ethics at all? And they said there are problems, but also benefits to casual sex. However, the problems and benefits are not particular to sex alone. And then they go on to say that like kindness, vulnerability, communication, that's all across someone's spectrum. It's not just as it relates to their sex life, which got me thinking, okay, yeah, like why is it important, if at all, to have some sort of thought or formation around sexual ethics?
Yeah. You'll just want to hope that that's not the social media clip that gets pulled for the episode.
Why? Does it look like I'm saying? Does it look like I'm saying? Who cares?
Right. Yes.
As I'm quoting someone.
I think that. I think I hear what the person is saying, but I think that's perhaps naive in the sense that, with regard to our most powerful desires for money, for power, for sex, I think that those, because of the immensity of the power of those things, then of course we want to have very intentional conversations about the ethos, which is the root of ethics, right? Of the ethe, the way you're going to do all this stuff. Of course, we want to have conversations about that kind of stuff, about what's helpful, what's unhelpful, what's destructive, what's life-giving. So I do think you want to have very intentional conversations about sexual ethics like you want to have conversations about ethics around money and ethics around power. That's probably going to be crucial.
That there's something unique specifically about sexual ethics that needs and deserves attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I agree with that.
I mean, I think when the brain scientist can tell us, oh, what's going on in your brain is like dopamine off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pay attention to that.
And how we're talking about it and what we're forming in our communities as it relates to sex. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will start some good conversations. I'm interested in the feedback.
I would imagine it will start some good conversations.
Definitely go check out Colton Barnaby's video on this, which we'll link in the show notes, as well as the Substack from Aaron Williams called The Cost of Casual Sex. I think that you all will find it really interesting. Thanks for the convo today, Lee.
Thanks, Savannah. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Subtext.
Start a conversation with your friends, your favorite group chat, or even your enemies by sharing this episode with someone who might like to discuss it with you.
Want to become a part of the conversation? DM us, DM Savannah, email us your thoughts or topic ideas at info@nosmallendeavor.com.
Leave us a review wherever you're listening and leave us 5 stars. Follow us on socials at The Subtext Show, at Savannah_Locke, and at Lee C. Camp.
Very grateful to have you as a listener.
See you next Wednesday.
Lee C. Camp here. If you're enjoying this show, I'd love to tell you about a new podcast from Tokens Media called The Subtext. Each week, I sit down with Savannah Locke, a self-admitted pop culture expert, and she helps me catch up on everything I've missed, which, given that I do not own a cell phone, is quite a bit. In fact, Savannah was very pleased to teach me about the fact that Taylor Swift had gotten engaged about 6 weeks after it happened. So on The Subtext, Savannah brings a pop culture moment, celebrity drama, internet debates, viral shows, and together we ask a deeper question. Why does any of this actually matter? What does it reveal about our culture, our theology, and the lives that we are living online and in the public square? And how might we, as Christians, enjoy the world in ways that reflect truth, beauty, and goodness? It's a conversation between someone who lives very much on the internet and someone who lives a lot off of it. And that tension makes for surprisingly meaningful dialogue. If you're looking for a place to begin, I'd suggest our recent episode on the rival Super Bowl halftime shows, a fascinating conversation. So follow The Subtext on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and join us as we look beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious.